Our mission is keeping people in society safe. It's not just a tagline. It's what we believe. It's who we are. Take a big risk, leave it all on the line, and go try and create something.
Hello and welcome to the SCAPA podcast, Creating the Future. My name is Mary Mattingly and I'm the Chief of Staff for Michael Brasseur at SCAPA by Saab. Today we're doing something a little bit different and I will be interviewing Michael to reflect on the last 2 seasons of this podcast. So Michael, welcome to the show.
It's great to be on your show, Mary. What an interesting perspective.
Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. I'm really excited to do this. And it's a different perspective from sitting behind the scenes to now sitting in this seat next to you. So thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for producing the show. It's great to have you hosting it. You've been behind the scenes, really helping us level up season 2. We've decided to do all of them in studio at your recommendation. And then we've also enjoyed a really nice bump in our ratings. They're up nearly 200%. So thanks to you for elevating the show to this level. And I couldn't think of a better host than you for the final episode of season 2.
Thank you so much, Michael. No, it's been really fun to get to watch from behind the scenes and just the creative process of how the show works. It's been a really cool experience and not something I thought I would ever get to be a part of. So again, thank you. So before we get started and before we reflect on the last 2 seasons and just the show itself, I wanted to start with the why. Why the SCAPA podcast? What inspired this? And just to kind of get an inside scoop on the genesis of this.
Well, when we launched SCAPA, one of the initial ambitions or objectives of SCAPA was really to have a forum for thought leadership. And, I've done some writing in the past, but that left me kind of wanting into deeper conversations, going vertical on this notion of the future and what it looks like. And more importantly, how do you create the future? I've always been a guy who, when I come into a situation, I see it as it is, but more importantly, I see it as it could be. And I've been inspired by, actually, most of our guests are inspirations for me. And I wanted to bring them on the show, understand, first of all, their vision of the future, but more importantly, how you translate that vision to reality. And we're very, very selective about who we choose for this show.
Can you tell me why you wanted to do a podcast versus any other kind of form of media?
What really jumped out to me is the long format, which enables deeper conversations and, more importantly, storytelling. I think storytelling is a lost art, especially in this age where it's got to be done in 5 to 6 seconds and
TikTok era.
I love listening to stories and I love telling stories. And I think it's an important part of transmitting the culture, but also actually delivering the future. So yeah, that's why we chose this forum. And as I mentioned earlier, done some significant amount of writing, but I like the human side of these podcasts are, I don't care if there's 1 or 2 viewers. It's really just a conversation between me and these brilliant people that are delivering the future.
It's so funny. I feel like our producer, James, he always creates these beautiful scripts for us. And then as soon as you start the interview, it's like, I don't think you look at a paper one time because there's something so beautiful about just being in the moment and being able to share the stories that you're referring to with the guests. For example, August Cole, when we were in Boston and you were interviewing August, as someone who is a writer, like August being a writer, he was able to still share so many stories in such an eloquent way that I, who had not at that time read any of his books, I was able to consume and take in a much different way through the podcast medium. So I absolutely agree. There's that human element. That's really interesting.
I like to say I'm an optimist who stares into the abyss. That's so great. Like, it's probably going to work out. Yeah. I like to believe in our better angels. Many of these capabilities, for all their benefits, have an inverse, right? There's an alpha and an omega.
What is the criteria when you're choosing a guest? Because if you look back on season 1 and season 2, each guest is very thoughtfully chosen. So what do you think about when you're choosing who you want to invite?
So I think first and foremost, they have to be visionaries. Big, bold ideas about what the future of defense and security looks like. The next criteria is it's got to be someone who's actually brought a vision to reality. And it's easy to talk about the future. It's very hard to deliver it. And if you recall the episode with Sky, this rebels and servants, the guys that are disruptive, but also the people that pull it through to action, which I think is so important.
I think that in general, within innovation teams, people tend to have two different types of personalities. One is the rebel and one is a servant. And the rebel is like, I want to pull this apart and try something new and shake up this organization and create something that is going to change the face of how we do this. And those are the ones that are always looking at the horizon and saying, like, I want to find the thing that I can just completely change this all, change the paradigm of how we think about this. And the servants are the ones that are there for the transition of, I really enjoy seeing somebody's good idea and helping them to drag that to reality and helping them pull it over to the larger organization and baking it in so that it's sustained and maintained over whatever amount of time.
That was a really interesting episode to listen in on. I think that was an episode that I learned a lot as well. And Sky is someone who has been amazing to get to watch as she's come into Saab. And I've heard so much about her through you and your guys' experience together while you were active duty. And to see her now in Saab is a really cool thing to watch.
Yeah, Sky was a really fantastic get for Saab. I truly enjoyed working with her. You know, as I've told you many times, you're my partner. Sky was my partner at Task Force 59. There was a huge sort of rank difference. She was an ensign. I was a Commodore. But at the end of the day, the best ideas won. And if Sky's idea was the best for the warfighter, we went for it. And I learned a lot from Sky, and I'm so happy to have her here at Saab. And for our viewers, they should definitely watch that episode, Rebels and Servants.
It was one of the coolest things to watch you guys interact as well. Before we get into the guests from the last 2 seasons, I want to hear about how you came up with the idea for Scapa by Saab. What was the need? What was the gap you were trying to fill? So if you could give us a little bit of that background, that would be great.
Oh, thanks, Mary. And as I mentioned, I love storytelling, and this is a really fun story to tell. So this was back in March of 2023. I was just winding down my tour at Task Force 59, an absolute thrill ride at Task Force 59. And I was planning to go to NATO's Diana. I had been working every weekend with Deep Chana and Rob Murray as we were about to stand up NATO's Diana, the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic. And just about a week before I finished at Task Force 59, I got this really nice note from Saab and one of the GMs there. And the note went something like this: hey, we are thinking about building out a naval autonomy business. Would you like to lead it? And let me tell you all the reasons why I like working at Saab. So I was intrigued. And I had not known much about Saab. Like most people, I thought it was a car company. And I had not worked with them at Task Force 59. And when I transitioned, I didn't want to go to a company I had worked with. I had worked with 23 different companies, 23 or 25 different companies, really amazing companies. But I didn't want even the perception that they were on contract because I was going to them afterwards. And so I told Rob and Deep, hey, I've got this really interesting inquiry from Saab. I just want to see what my market value is, but I'm all in on Diana. So I responded, and before the GM could respond, Eric, our CEO, Eric Smith, responded, and we started a dialogue. And Eric and I were talking every Saturday, and I said, well, what do you really need? and he said, I kind of need like a Task Force 59 for Saab Inc., one that works with the end users, iterates in the operational environment, works across our 4 verticals, surveillance, aerospace, land systems, and autonomous and undersea systems, and really leverages the emerging technologies that are here and now to create new capability fast. And we weren't looking, way out into the future like a Skunk Works or a Phantom Works. We were really looking inside 2027. And I said, well, let's create it. I had passed Task Force 59 in Aqaba, Jordan, and I was in Wadi Rum, this beautiful desert just north of Aqaba. And so I put together I was on vacation with my family. So I put together a pitch deck of what I would create if I were Saab. And I called it Saab X. And I had the full pitch deck, and I sent that to Eric, and I guess it really resonated. And very quickly we got from idea to, hey, let's do this. I went to Stockholm, made sure that the investment was what it was necessary to do this and win. And then, I signed with Saab a month later, and we were off and running. So it was a really interesting experience, but I'm convinced there's no accidents in life.
I really appreciate that background. And it's interesting because when you talk about working in the capacity when you were active duty to now being on this side in industry and working closely with the end user and the warfighter is something that is so important. Like you had mentioned, why we're in San Diego. So speaking of being in San Diego and being right there with the warfighter, Larson Jensen is someone who is your neighbor and who has now become a friend. He was on the podcast for the last season as well. I want to reflect a little bit about that episode because I think that there was something to be said about his time as an operator, as well as him being an Olympian, which is fascinating and something that you talk about a lot, this athlete mindset when you're looking at talent and you're looking at partnership.
Coming from where I came from in Bakersfield, California, that I was very fortunate to represent our country on a global scale and to represent our country against other countries around the world. And to wear Team USA not only on my jersey, but on my cap and my suit. It is just an honor that's hard to compare to anything else. But if I was going to further that commitment to our country, that I should do more than provide lip service, I should sign up and serve, and I should do so in uniform.
First of all, Larson Jensen is an American icon, and I can't believe we had him. We actually did that episode in San Diego, as you mentioned. We're neighbors out in Coronado. I think this is a real tremendous asset in the defense tech community. Larson, so as you mentioned, former Navy SEAL, Stanford Graduate School of Business, actually did the Olympics, bronze medalist, I believe, and then started Harpoon Ventures, which is one of our great partners down there in San Diego. I think what Larson sort of brings to life is this notion of team and how important that is to winning, right? So he was in the teams to start his career, and you depend on each other for surviving. And there's no greater dependency, and there's nothing that can bring someone closer together than that.
And that trust.
Yeah, and that trust. And there are a lot of parallels to sports. And while, those parallels end in terms of winning and losing in combat is the difference between living and dying. But in sports, this notion of being a really good teammate and together, 1 + 1 + 1 equaling 10, and that's what we try and get as we built out our team at Scapa. And we look for former operators. We look for former athletes. That sense of team, I think, is very important as you're going on mission. And I still feel like I'm on a mission here at Saab. Our mission is keeping people in society safe. It's not just a tagline. It's what we believe. It's who we are. And I want to do that with a team that are committed to the mission.
So you bring up the keeping people in society safe, which is one of the biggest things that resonated with me when I started at Saab, actually. And we've had Paul Johnson, actually the Minister of Defense in Sweden, on the podcast as well. An incredible episode for anyone who hasn't listened to that. If you could talk a little bit about that interview and what you learned and gathered from Paul Johnson's perspective.
I think Paul is one of the most innovative defense ministers in the world, right? And when you think about Paul, you realize that Sweden is a small nation with a big adversary right next door. And it is the classic case of necessity being the mother of invention, right? They need to protect their territory, their sovereignty, and they don't have a ton of resource. And so like innovation is in their DNA. It's who they are as a nation. And I think he is an exceptional leader. He's been very forward-leaning in Ukraine. He's been an ultimate partner there. And, you know, we had him out in San Diego for a visit. He's a former, he used to be on the CB90 when he was in the Marines. And so it was just great to get to know him on that personal level. We still communicate from time to time. The thing that really resonated with me from that episode was Paul is a visionary who delivers. And I hope people go back and watch that. That's our first episode, I think. Please forgive us for the production quality.
We were learning.
That was our first episode. And I think still to this day, our most popular episode.
Big accomplishments that we've been able to obtain by delivering things to Ukraine, doing complex things like sending tanks and IFVs, artillery systems, but we've shown that it's possible to do things quickly. So I think a mindset of making sure that you have to take an element of risk in order to make things deliver quickly, I think that's absolutely vital.
I want to circle back to something that you had said about the athlete mindset. So another analogy was from Tyler Sweat from Second Front, CEO, which we're actually in DC today to attend the Offset Symposium. So this is very timely. But he had an interesting analogy and story about him being a goalie when he was, I believe, at West Point. And that really resonated with you because of your daughter.
Yeah.
So if you could just give us a little bit of an idea.
Yeah, and so this didn't make it into the episode, but we had this
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. Maybe we can get James. Can you get that and play that for people? But Tyler and Tyler was a goalie at West Point. And Tyler is also this larger than life character in the defense tech space, and has done brilliant work at Second Front. We did some leading edge work with them with Game Warden Frontier, which was the first deployment of their capability to the edge on our autonomous CB90. But when Tyler and I were talking, and I made the misassumption that he played football, just because.
How dare ya?
Yeah. And he's, no, man, I played soccer. And I said, well, what position did you play? He says, I played goalie. And I said, oh my gosh, my daughter was a goalie or is a goalie. And it's such an unforgiving position. Either it's a 1 or a 0, right? And if you get scored on, there's nobody behind you to save you. Did you play football?
Soccer.
Okay, soccer.
Yeah, which throws everybody off.
Okay. All right, what position?
I was a goalie.
Okay.
My mom would never sign the release in high school for me to play football. And so I went to a Catholic high school that used to freak out that I wasn't playing football.
Gosh, I'm a goalie dad.
Oh, heck yeah.
It's the worst position to be
That's
because
the
there's
best.
nobody behind you.
Yeah.
And then
No margin for error, man.
Yeah, no. Sometimes you have a very disappointed little girl to coach up.
Yeah. It builds character, though.
It builds character, and I think also you see the whole field and you see everything.
You start to see things in math.
Yeah.
Everything's kind of angles. And you're really, at least for me, it was like flow and how to understand kind of moving pieces on a board, because you're really looking to either create space or close space.
Yeah.
And then everything in a goalie is just an angle you're taking, right? It's like there's some degree of like reaction and spring and all of that. Like you can train that.
Yeah.
But the angle is you make the goal smaller if you step out 2 steps and step right the right way.
And I'll never forget, my daughter had got scored on 3 times in the first half of one game, and was kind of demoralized, but then went out and just played an amazing second half. And I said, Leonie, how were you so good that second half? And she said, well, I just pretended it was 0-0.
That's precious.
Yeah. And, she's 9 years old. And that mindset of what's done is done. Mm-hmm. What's more important is what's ahead of us.
Right.
And that's kind of our mindset here at Scapa, at Saab, on the podcast. And so one of the things that Tyler also shared and that I've learned through my daughter is when you're a goalie, you see the entire field and you position your defense accordingly and you set up the offense. When you see the entire battlefield like that, or the entire playing field or pitch or whatever you call the soccer field, you see things differently.
Right.
You see stuff that other people don't see. I think Tyler has that vision. And, in many respects, second front is playing defense, right? Mm-hmm. They're keeping our networks and now robotics secure.
I also think, having that connection with your daughter is something that was very human to hear and really a cool experience.
I have to say, just on this thing as a dad, a dad of a daughter, I'm probably going to get emotional here, okay. But I work with amazing women, Mary Mattingly, David Kiraj, Taylor Magos, Paige Castellan. I know I'm going to forget some.
Kate
Hanner, Erica, all these amazing women. And you guys interact with my daughter, and Sky Moore, Forbes 30 under 30s. And you are inspirations for her. She wants to be like you one day. And so I just got to tell you, that's such a joy as a dad. Yeah.
That means a lot. Thank you. And it is so fun too, to be able to come and, be kind of a part of your family now and interact with your kids, in that capacity. So that really means a lot. Thank you, Michael. Speaking of the amazing women that we have on our team, you got to interview some really badass women this season. I mean, Jenny McArdle, fantastic. Brennan, that was a really, really cool episode with Brennan coming out of stealth. If you don't mind just kind of reflecting on specifically Brennan's episode, which was a shock, I think, to all of us. Yeah. What happened on that episode?
Yeah, so Brennan came out of stealth on our podcast.
That was crazy.
I'll have to check the numbers. I believe it's our second most watched podcast, right behind Paul. And her company, Vantive, is really doing graduate level work on supply chain resiliency and finding those pinch points and trying to help companies get ahead of it.
So Vantive is the name of the company. It is a portmanteau between vantage and quantitative. So we give you a new vantage point for your supply chain based on quantitative analysis that's informed by experts who have actually lived this problem day in and day out, like myself. So we were incorporated just over a year ago. I now have 3 members of my team, which is fantastic. And 2026 is our year. We're coming out of stealth and we're really looking forward to the future.
I love entrepreneurs. Those that sort of take a big risk, leave it all on the line and go try and create something. And so that episode really, really touched me because, first of all, like I said, because she was coming out of stealth on our podcast. That was a first for us. But also, she was venturing out into the world with an idea. And that's risky. And I love those that take a risk. And then Jenny McArdle, I hope I said that right. brilliant, PhD. It was just like food for the brain.
When it comes to software-defined warfare, and when we think about what the future of mission command looks like, what I find more interesting is like, okay, when it comes to that, we're actually going to be talking about human-machine teams. So that's going to be human operators directing unmanned systems. And I think we focus a lot in industry on the autonomy suite itself and the platform, but we don't really think about how we optimize for human performance. And so what I'm very interested in when it comes to the future of war is how do you think about that entire ecosystem?
She's done some groundbreaking work in modeling and simulation, and I think that's a great foundation for the work that we're doing here at SCAPA. To see her lead Helsing's entrance into the U.S. is very exciting. As you know, Helsing is a partner of Saab's, and they have a really differentiated capability that I think is going to do very well in the U.S., and it's going to do very well because of Jenny McCardle. I loved that podcast.
Absolutely. That was a great episode. So this week, I know we've been traveling a lot, and you actually came from Detroit for the AUVSI Exponential conference, and we had Michael Robbins on the show this season, which was a really fantastic episode. He had on a great outfit. I remember you making a comment about it as soon as he walked in. But can you reflect a little bit on that episode with Michael Robbins?
Yeah. So first of all, I as you mentioned, I just came from Detroit. I'm a board member at AUVSI, and I couldn't be more proud of the product that AUVSI puts on with Exponential. Detroit was an exceptional host city, but really it's all about the conversations that he's curating and the leadership that he's showing in this emergent field of autonomy, right? And that has to be regulated to keep people in society safe. And he is a real leader in this space. And what I really didn't know until we did the podcast is that he had spent so much time on Capitol Hill. It's why AUVSI was very strong and respected on Capitol Hill. And Michael himself is an amazing leader. And I've got to watch him from the inside as a board member, seeing him take AUVSI to the next level. And I'm not just talking about the numbers. I'm talking about the thought leadership that Michael prepares. And if you haven't watched it, you need to see Michael's speech keynote, welcoming remarks at Exponential. You have to watch it. It's visionary. And again, I keep coming back to visionaries that deliver. That's what the SCAPA podcast is all about.
That's a culture change that we're undergoing right now, where we're beginning to utilize robotics more and more, but it's still very nascent. And that's both because we lack scale and have lacked the sort of acquisition process to speed those in, but also because there's still sometimes a lack of trust in the system. And I think a lot of what we're focused on is how to build the sort of small S standards around like what is trust and how do you achieve that trust for the warfighter so they're comfortable using this technology and know it's going to cause whatever the effect or whatever the mission outcome that they're seeking with a high degree of fidelity.
It's been a joy to work with their whole team at AUVSI because they really are doing something very different in the space when it comes to thought leadership. So I'm really happy that we were able to host him for that episode. I think I want to stay on this futurist and visionary theme right now. So let's talk about Amir Hussain.
I knew you were going there. I knew you were going there.
That was an incredible episode. And I know that's someone who has been a very big inspiration for you in your work, not just here at SCAPA, but throughout your career. So can you talk a little bit about what resonated with you the most? Because I know that you called me after that episode and you were so moved. You were so inspired by that.
Yeah. So that episode was season 2. We went to Austin to see Amir in his hometown.
The use of technology for the creation of a society that can elevate humankind, that is a goal that is worth pursuing.
Amir Hussain is probably my greatest inspiration in this space. I would say back in 2018, Yeah. 2018, I saw a video of his online that just blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Innovating in the Age of Exponentials.
Oh, I remember
Yeah.
that one. Yeah,
So
we can
we'll
add that.
Yeah, we'll drop that in the links. And at the time, I was at the U.S. mission to NATO, and we were just launching a new initiative called the NATO Maritime Unmanned Systems Initiative. And the initiative was based on the premise that ships, submarines, and aircraft are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
That the Allies had key capability gaps. Could robotics above, on, and below the water help close some of those capability gaps?
Mm-hmm.
And after seeing this video, I decided to stand up an innovation advisory board, which I'll talk about in a second. But the video really highlights, okay, we're on an exponential trajectory. There's several exponentials colliding in terms of technology and the pace of acceleration. And in order to thrive in those areas, Amir laid out 4 or 5 things that really would put you on the front foot in this environment.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was work in diverse cross-functional teams, right? Get ideas from everywhere. Another one was become a voracious reader.
Mm-hmm.
And this video just inspired me to create this innovation advisory board. And I got these very different people, and I got Amir,
Mm-hmm.
and so I reached out to him,
the
and
source.
and he joined the board. I got Deep Chana, I got Peter Singer, I got Rob Murray, I had Sarah Zangley, Sarah Traversal. That was her maiden name.
Mm-hmm.
She was the number one. She was a marketing executive for the number one brand in the world, Coca-Cola.
Wow.
I had a playwright on there. I had this very diverse team. And what that created was multiple angles looking at the same problem sparks new ideas,
Mm-hmm.
new ideas. And so we iterated on this idea of a digital ocean for NATO. All sensor fusion from seabed to space, leveraging machine learning and AI to go really into the predictive space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Amir is a huge inspiration for me. And that particular episode was our longest episode. I don't know, this one may be the longest because I'm talking so much.
We do like to talk a lot.
Well, just be glad we don't have Rob Murray on this episode because, Rob was in the first season and we couldn't get a word in edgewise. We were like, Rob, the guests need to speak.
Hey, at least he has a good British accent.
Yeah, he's got that great British accent. But anyways, in the Amir Hussein episode, we talk a lot about the future of defense and technology,
Mm-hmm.
but what we also talk about is how that affects the kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
How AI affects your kids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a great episode, and we talked about coming back to first principles
Mm-hmm.
when you're building tech, but also when you're raising kids. He mentioned that his son didn't use AI. He liked to learn, the first principles.
Mm. That's so important, I think, nowadays too. And it's funny seeing this generational shift of coworkers and colleagues who are coming into the workforce with this totally new idea of work and what it means to do like research and things like that. So really interesting. So another futurist you had on and someone that you said you draw inspiration from is Peter Singer.
Yeah.
He was on season 1, I believe.
If you want to be embracing the future, there's something that you're going to have to stop doing from the past.
How has having all of these guests with such a visionary and futurist mindset influenced your view of the future of warfare?
I think when we talk about the future of warfare, everybody wants to talk about the technology.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's less about the technology and more about the imagination required to apply it in novel ways that puts the adversary on the back foot, that gives you the advantage. And, with Peter Singer and August Cole, they've written these really wonderful books, Burn In, The Ghost Fleet, Wired for War. I mean, these books really take the technology. There's 300 or so footnotes or references in each of their books, and then projects it into the future. And with Burn In particular, for me, it's a story about trust between human and machine. And I lived that at Task Force 59, right? I was out there with, as I mentioned, 23 or 25 different companies with robots in a very unforgiving environment, tangling with the Iranians. And if you can't trust the robot, you won't use the robot. And it'll become a liability on the battlefield. And so that story, I felt that at the edge as I was deploying robotics in the operational environment versus real problems. That story really resonated with me. And in fact, we had a part of our capability sprint model that was called the Burn In.
Interesting. As you were talking just now, I was immediately thinking back to that team mentality for the sports that we were talking about earlier today, of just that teaming and partnership with the robot, and that trust that you have to have as well is something that's interesting to draw on.
And as we look to the future of warfare, and the zone is being flooded right now with robots at scale, which is good and bad, right? If the end user cannot adopt and deploy in a meaningful way, they will become a liability. And we need to apply more brain power to that part of the equation.
Absolutely. Is there anything that SCAPA is doing right now that you see as an incredible way to address that?
We essentially co-design with the end user. Our model is what we call the SCAPA innovation flywheel. So we start with the operational problem. So that's the input to the model, and the output is scalable solutions to those problems. And I'll kind of walk you through the flywheel
Please
here.
do.
So the first piece is imagine. All right. Imagine the future as you would like to create it to address that problem that we started with. In this phase, the whiteboard is the most important piece of technology, right? You go to the whiteboard alongside the end user, and you co-design a solution to your problem. Then you create. And actually, SCAPA means to create. It means to create, to make, to shape. And it's not just kind of what we do, it's who we are. We're creators. And so you take those ideas and you bring them into the physical world, which is very easy to say, but very, very hard to do.
Absolutely.
There's physics and electrical engineering and all this stuff that needs to happen to bring that into the physical world. And then you get to an MVP, basically. And then the next phase is iterate. So you're iterating in the operational environment versus real problems alongside real warfighters. And what I learned at Task Force 59 and what I've learned here at SCAPA is warfighters are very unforgiving customers, and for good reason.
As they should be.
Failure could mean death for them. And so failure, while it's important in terms of developing new capability is on the other side of failure. They are very particular about what they want. They'll tell you very quickly, that sucks. Why did you think of that? What were you thinking? But that feedback is so important, and you doing that really tight cycles, you get that MVP to a scalable solution, and then you intersect the problem, which is the fourth piece of the SCAPA innovation flywheel, and you intersect at scale. I always say the most interesting thing about SCAPA by Saab is the by Saab, because we can intersect problems at scale. We are not tinkering. We are not doing science projects. We are solving problems at scale.
So the by Saab is something that is so important, and I think it's a huge differentiator, right, for something like SCAPA to be backed by Saab. And I always love when you say that when we're in meetings or when we're meeting with industry or partners, you always note the by Saab, and I think that's really important. And on the podcast in season 1, you had some key leaders from Saab.
This is a very new day, and a day in which, as an industry, we need to get our heads around the times of living in this entitled world where our customers tell us their problems, and we tell them that we'll solve them when and if they pay us to solve them. Those days are gone.
Yeah. So we had Eric Smith, the CEO, I think it was the finale of season one. So this is the finale of season two. So, Eric is a great leader. I've learned a lot from him in the first 3 years in the private sector. He's a great mentor. He took a chance on me. I was sort of unproven in the private sector. He spends time to develop me. I really enjoyed that episode. And to see, as I mentioned, we sort of drew up Scapa in the sand, in the desert in Wadi Rum. And to see it in the real world, and then to have the success that we've had. I mean, we've got 9 or 10 U.S. government contracts. We're performing well, and about to scale, which is exciting. It's also risky because you put yourself out there. You have an idea. You think it's the right idea, but it's a hyper competitive market. A lot of very well funded new entrants. We Saab feel very well positioned in this space, right? So we are a prime. We make ships, submarines, aircraft, amazing sensors, but we're a small prime, and we can kind of turn inside of the larger primes. And then, there's a lot of new entrants, and they're bringing a pace of play, which I think is long overdue, but perhaps they lack the depth and the scale required to really solve these problems at scale, the technical depth. And Saab has that. So Scapa by Saab is just this really, just in a really sweet spot in the market that's being disrupted right now. And first of all, I'm really happy about the disruption. I could feel the pace of play was not what it needed to be when I was in the Navy and leading Task Force 59. And so I love the pace. I love the scale. And I'm very excited about the future.
That's amazing to hear. I think someone who probably would resonate with that message is a guest you had on, Marcus Want, who is a really inspiring person, and also just really cool. So if you haven't seen that episode, highly recommend watching that one. We can link it below, but that was a great episode to record.
Yeah. So Marcus Want, for those who don't know, he just happens to be a Gripen, a Gripen test pilot, an astronaut. I think he's an electrical engineer or something like this. An amazing dude, and he's my counterpart. He's my opposite number in Sweden. So we're talking a lot about Scapa, but I am also the chief strategy officer, and as part of the chief strategy officer role for Saab Inc., I lead strategy, so the 5-year business plan, the quarterly business reviews, and technology, Devesh, and growth of the company, both inorganic growth and organic growth. And so I clutch in with Marcus on 2 or 3 of those portfolios because he leads strategy and technology for Saab AB. And Marcus... oh gosh, I love this guy. He's a visionary that goes hyper tactical and technical on what it actually takes to bring something into reality. Saab is very much an engineering company. You know this, and I loved that conversation with him. I've also had him to my house for barbecues. My kids for show and tell, brought pictures of Marcus Want. And I get to work with Marcus and Mary Mattingly, Sky Moore, Eric Smith. It's really if you can tell, it's a joy for me. It's pure joy.
It's a fun place to work, for sure.
You should do that. I mean, I think what we're realizing here is we've, for those who haven't seen the podcast, There's so many great episodes. There's so many great conversations to go take a look at.
Going out into something unknown and really pushing the boundaries and aim far out into uncharted terrain gives you the possibility to explore and find things that you didn't even know you were looking for.
So you talk a lot about partners, and you always say partner with a big P. I love that because it shows value in your relationships with people that you respect and that you want to pull ideas from and inspiration from. Michael Stewart is someone that has been a partner with a big P, as you always say, for a very long time for you. So why did you decide to have him on the podcast? And what does that partnership look like now that you're at Saab?
Well, first, let me talk about this word partner. It's very important to me on a very human level. And I say partner with a big P because it conveys equality, that you're on equal footing. And when we partner with an industry partner, we don't care if you're a small company like Mythos AI with 8 people or Microsoft, and we've partnered with both of those. And I actually used to, when I was at Task Force 59, I would not let people on my team call our industry partners vendors. I said, vendors sell beer and popcorn at baseball games.
Yeah, it's very transactional.
Yeah. And I love beer and popcorn and I love vendors. These are our industry partners. They are in it with us. They are in the boat rowing with us. I can think of a situation with Saildrone that we had over there in the Middle East, and Richard Jenkins was in it with me. He was my partner, and so when I'm talking about Scapa and Saab, you guys, Mary Mattingly, are my partner. What you say matters. We're on equal footing. And I think that's very important when you're trying to build something and build something amazing. When I think about the Michael Stewart episode, now keep in mind, I have heard every Michael Stewart story at least 5 times, right? So I knew that episode before it was going to happen because I heard it all in the car. I mean, Michael and I have driven all over the Middle East with him. And even if he'll ask you, have I told you this story before? And you'll say, yes. He'll just go on with the story. And I'm like, Michael, I said, yes, I've heard this story.
If you're a ship guy and the way you're promoted in the Navy is you're pretty much buy more ships or make your ships ready. If you're an aircraft guy, it's buy more aircraft or make your aircraft ready. And if you're a submarine guy, buy more submarines, make them more ready, right? And by and large, they don't have enough money to do any of those things, right? So they're always scrapping and scraping money trying to get there. So suddenly you have a guy bounce in who says, I'm this disruptive guy and I'm thinking about unmanned and AI and it's not necessarily proven. None of those 3 people are going to turn to you and say, that was such a compelling story. Let me give you 10% of my budget. It's not going to happen, right? And so what you have to do, and what we tried to do in the DCO, was set up an organization that could vet non-traditional technologies and capabilities while understanding the operational problem.
That episode was really important because Michael was an amazing partner for me at Task Force 59. So we were out on the edge, and many people thought we were tinkering or, playing with little boats, and they didn't really get what we were trying to do. And Michael was translating into the Pentagon. You guys don't get it. You are getting disrupted. These guys are doing this better, faster, cheaper. If they can do this at scale, you really have a transformational moment. It's a SpaceX, it's a SpaceX moment. And Michael was able to translate that into what was happening at the edge, not only with the robots, but with the work we were doing. We were prototyping the digital ocean, which I mentioned before, that all sensor fusion from seabed to space, leveraging machine learning and AI to get into the predictive space so we could be very specific in how we deployed our limited manned assets. Michael was also leading the unmanned task force and later the disruptive capabilities office. So to have that partner in the Pentagon was key to our success at the edge.
Right.
Michael understands the Pentagon on a level very few people do. He also sees the future very clearly, and he was and remains an amazing partner and a friend. And that's all I want to say, because all the other stuff I can't say on the podcast. I will say again, I've heard all of his stories multiple times. What a great episode though. That is, I think we called that a masterclass in defense innovation, and that is not an understatement.
Yeah, absolutely. That I think was our first episode we recorded here in the studio, actually.
Yeah. So we're, you guys can't see it, but there's a different set over there. But we decided for season 2 to go to the more casual setting.
Yeah, absolutely. A theme that I've noticed with some startup founders that we've had on the podcast is seeing their growth from, when you've got to meet them until now has been awesome. Fatima is someone who we had on season 1, who I know is a dear friend of yours. And seeing what her company is doing today is remarkable.
It's the so what of technology. So what if we can fly nonstop 75 hours? And depending on the use case and the environment we're flying in. But it was always that if we could fly near perpetual, we then become that connective tissue between sea, land, air, and space. One of the things that has really come up in Ukraine is it's not just about the cost of these assets, but how quickly can you integrate technology into it or iterate through it as you learn real time what's happening in the battlefield.
Yeah, and I put Fatima in the same category as Richard Jenkins. I had Kraus Hamdani Aerospace on contract at Task Force 59. Fatima and Stefan, Stefan is the Kraus, Fatima is the Hamdani of Kraus Hamdani Aerospace. And they're amazing founders. And they put the mission above everything. They did amazing things to get me very exquisite, actually just exceptional capability out to the edge. And I am really happy to see them scale. I think they just signed a $270 million contract with CENTCOM. And they were doing work for me early days, 3-4 years ago, basically at cost, or they may have been losing money, but they put the mission above. And Fatima is one of these amazing CEOs, and I'm happy to see her company scaling.
The triple helix is something that's very central to what we're doing here at Scapa. Michelle was on the podcast. She's great. She's at Purdue working with the Kroc Institute.
How do you play to win versus play to not lose? How do you make sure you're writing your own playbook versus responding to somebody else? And something I've noticed over the past, say 7 to 8 years in Washington, D.C. is I called it an obsession, but an obsession with China as our pacing challenge. You'll see it written in various national security documents as pacing challenge or our pacing threat. I spent a week with the U.S. military across all of the various branches last summer. We got various briefings, and it was all about China as our pacing challenge. And I was like, I would love to hear about what America's vision is and not what we're doing to respond to China, because it's just that's antithetical to the American way. When did we start to look to China to set our own pace? And also, it's not true. We're setting our own pace. If you look at what SpaceX is doing, if you look at what other partners across the free world like Saab and Scapa are doing, right, to innovate defense technology, China isn't setting the pace. We are, but how do we make sure that we're focused on renewing what our vision is for the 21st century, writing our own playbook, uniting around that, and we can respond to what China and other adversaries are doing, but it's not about reacting to their goals.
Yeah, Michelle is exceptional. Michelle Gita, I hope I pronounced her name correctly. And talk about athletes. And so Michelle was a gymnast at UCLA.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they won the championship.
Oh,
and she was, I believe she was a walk-on, and they won the national championship while she was there. Again, coming back to that team atmosphere. So Michelle is a real leader in what we call tech diplomacy. And And one of the things I learned when I was at NATO, this is 2018, 2020 timeframe, is you could see these worlds colliding. Technology, diplomacy, future of warfare, you could see them, and they were going to converge. And you see it in the president's trip to China. Who did he take over? All the tech leaders from Silicon Valley are over there with them. Well, Michelle was ahead of that curve, and she launched the Kroc Institute for Tech Diplomacy at Purdue University. As I mentioned, Purdue has been an amazing partner, and Michelle is a wonderful intellectual sparring mate of mine, and we love to create and partner together. I also liked her comments on our podcast that, China's not a pacing threat. We set the pace.
Right.
American ingenuity, we set the pace. Since when does somebody else set the pace for us?
Another great person that I feel like feeds your brain a lot is Whitney.
Oh gosh, I love Whitney McNamara over at Beacon Global Strategies. We also collaborated on the Software-Defined Warfare Commission at the Atlantic Council. And very quickly, you can see Whitney has DC wired for sound. Like, she knows everybody.
She really does.
But more than that, she knows... She's like the archetype of someone that can imagine the future and then bring it to life, because she has the creativity, she has the technical depth, and she also has the connections to pull these things through and connect those dots and really deliver the future. She's done some amazing work on that Software-Defined Warfare Commission. But yeah, she was a great guest and a real pro in the space.
We have this system. It's not perfect. We've been able to do pretty great things with the system. For me, and the commissions have only grounded this, and my work at Beacon has only grounded this, is I think we all agree what right looks like. It doesn't mean everyone has a seat at the table, but it's like competition that benefits the warfighter. It benefits the taxpayer dollars. If you're providing, tech or services to DoD, that bar should be really high. And we should be empowering folks in DoD to know how to set the bar, how to make sure that bar is being met, and if it's not, to recompete something.
All right, Michael, how was it being in the
hot seat? It was an absolute thrill ride to go over those conversations, and it just reminds me what a wonderful forum this is for thought and leadership, but also do leadership about shaping the future of defense and security. I think we covered all the guests. If you haven't learned anything from this one, you need to go back and you need to watch these episodes. They're all available on YouTube or Spotify. Please like and subscribe. We're trying to obviously we're trying to get our numbers, but more importantly, we're trying to shape the future. And these conversations are so important in informing, but not only informing, but delivering the future of defense and security.
And sparking that creativity and imagination. Well, thank you so much, Michael.
All right. Thank you, Mary.
Awesome.